Today's lesson will be learning how to write a peak synthesis essay for Dummies by a dummy, and that's me. So my original recording was completely destroyed. I don't know how that's possible, but it was. So I'll do this again. To begin, the recommended time for a synthesis essay, right, is 55 minutes, right? So they're recommending that you do 15 minutes to read, right? 15 minutes to read, and then the 40 minutes to write. So when it comes to the 15 minutes you have to read, you have 15 minutes, so that's not necessarily a lot of time. But there's a few do's and don'ts you probably want to look out for, right? I cannot draw a line. Okay. So do's and do nots. Applies to when you're the 15 minutes that you're reading. So what you do want to do is find necessary info, right? Necessary info, okay? What you don't want to do is read in too much detail, right? Like too much detail. From what I've learned, reading in too much detail slows you down and you get a bunch of unnecessary information, right? So find the necessary info, right? Now, find info that supports the topic or your claim on the topic, right? So let's give a little example, right? So let's say we have our topic on the whole essay as like anime, right? So the value of anime, right? So the value of anime, right? This isn't necessarily an argument, but it is a synthesis and you'll be given sources. So let's say you say like anime is good, right? Anime is good, okay? You're gonna have to go ahead and find a bunch of sources. So let's say, I don't know, source D, F, C, B are 4, and then sources A and E are against it, right? Right, so you're trying, and if you're for it, you only want to find necessary information for it, right? The only time that you would want to scout like the negatives, so we could say bad, we could say here, good, right? So the only time you would want to scout the information against it is when you're creating like a nuance in your argument, right? So the tip is find info and only use info to support your argument, right? Even though it's a synthesis, your claim. Let's go claim, right? So the value, right? So the value. So avoid using things that don't support unless you're trying to add for nuance, right? So let's just don't read in too much detail, okay? Don't use unnecessary. Don't waste your time using unnecessary sources. Only the ones that support, right? And don't try to rush the sources, right? So don't try to rush when you're writing. Don't try to rush the sources. That means that you don't want to have to go ahead, read them all, and try to bring them every single one. This isn't like AP World where you get like sophistication. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you get like sophistication if you use all sources properly. But if you don't use them, you're sort of going to weaken your essay. If you use them all, you're going to weaken your essay if it's not well developed, right? So these are your sort of do's and don'ts within the 15 minutes that you have, right? And it's pretty self-explanatory, but let's keep this train going. All right. Now you got the 15 minutes out of the way. You got the 40 minutes to write now, okay? So you got the 40 minutes to write. Now, when you're writing, let me go ahead and get rid of this real quick. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. So you got to start somewhere, right? So, excuse me, you got to start somewhere. So you got to start an intro. You got to start at the introduction, okay? So with the intro, you got to start with a hook if possible, right? So the hook, it's sort of like an AP World if you're not taking it, that's okay. But a hook, it's sort of just get your reader captivated, right? You need to give context, and make the reader aware of what's going on or what your thing is going to be. Make reader aware of topic. So this is what your hook is for. That's what it is. Hook them in. Hook like a fish. Where my fishers at. Yeah. So once you got your hook, try to give the context, right? So as I said, the context is where you sort of explain like the major opinions, the topics and stances that people can have. So let's say it was like the value of anime, right? This is what my context would look like. Something like this, right? So, like as it says, anime has been seen by Westerners as a pastime for children. However, Japanese art has challenged this. Japanese animation, my bad. Japanese animation has challenged this view by adding complex narratives and stories that have now captured global interest. Obviously, I can't write everything, but now that I've had this little context, it'll show you what you should have. You need to have like the nuance, right? Seen by Westerners as a pastime for children, and then however statement to show that there's sort of two sides of the same coin, right? So that's how I would say two sides of the same coin. Anime is the coin, the positive and the negative, right? So you can think of it as coin, right? So should do my best to draw coin here. Also, rest in peace the penny gang. That's a bad coin, but you get what I mean, right? Two sides. So side one, and then the other side, side two, right? And then this is the whole anime. Okay. So now that we have our hook, we gotta have our thesis. So that should look a little something like thesis. Okay. It's pretty simple, but you guys have probably been drilled to know what a thesis is, right? It's your claim now. It's the position that you're gonna take. You're gonna support, qualify, as I said before. So you're gonna support, right? Support. What is it? Support. Disagree maybe. Disagree, right? Qualify. And then nuance, right? So nuance, right? Nuance is the one that gives you sophistication, but yeah. So you got to defend or challenge, right? So defend, challenge, whatever, yada yada yada. So you got to say like, let's say like x. Oh, that's the math x, right? X is beneficial, official, right? Or x is disadvantageous, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it has disadvantageous, right? Disadvantageous, right? So those are the disadvantageous. So those are the two things that you can sort of put for it, right? So that's your thesis. You guys already know what a thesis is. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but you get what I mean. So that's pretty much what a thesis is. Now we move on in the intro, and We've moved on from the intro. Excuse me. We've moved on from the intro. So now we're going on to the body paragraphs, right? So I'll give a little description of the body paragraphs at first. So here's the little pieces. So you got to have your here's your parts. So main idea, right? Main idea and topic sentence and topic sentence. This is for a single body paragraph, right? So we'll go B P 1 through 3. You don't need. I mean, this is the recommended amount. I'm not the AP Lang teacher. I'm just helping you out. But this is around what you need, right? So you need the main idea and topic. Evidence 1, right? So evidence number 1. Okay. Evidence number 1. Commentary. Evidence number 1 on evidence number 1. Commentary on evidence number 1. Um, I have a little thing for the commentary later, but that's the hardest part, obviously. Okay, once you got that, you got evidence number 2. Finally, commentary on evidence, right? Com on ev number 2. And then you got your conclusion at the end, obviously. So let's say conclude, right? Conclude, right? Conclude means that you're gonna summarize, right? So summarize and everything. Okay. So these are your pieces that you need to have. When you're writing, you should go M, E, C, E, C, C, right? But for the commentary, the most difficult part, I've created a little mnemonic for you guys. Okay, so I'm not the best artist in the world, but you guys know what this is, I hope. It's a cat. So for the commentary flow, let me write that down. I got EBCAT, okay? Pretty self-explanatory what each of these are. I'm gonna explain them each in detail soon, but EBCAT. So you got your evidence, right? So you got your evidence, right? So I said that the exact same thing 2 times in a row. Evidence. Then you got your because statement, right? Because. Now you got your consequently statement. So consequently, this is showing the effect, right? Cause and effect. You got your A, that's the analysis. And then your final one, the therefore, right? So therefore. So EBCAT. EBCAT. Edward Beck's cat. That's just a fake name I created. Totally not a real person. Edward Beck's cat. Okay. He doesn't have one, but Edward Beck's cat. Now, let's go ahead and explain each part quickly. Okay. Evidence. Evidence is your statement where you're going to be like, just drop your quote, right? So your your quote, okay? And sort of show how it like ties like into, so tie into a, excuse me, that is so bad. Sort of how it, how, or have it, okay. Have a piece of evidence that ties into your claim. Okay? Have an evidence tied to a specific part of your claim. For example, let's say this is my cat. Okay? Let's say this is my cat, and my claim is that cats are cute. Okay? I give evidence that shows cats' features, how their big eyes, furry face. It sort of releases like oxytocin or dopamine in humans, right? That would be my evidence to tie into how cats are cute, right? Right? Okay. Let me write this down real quick just to give you a visual idea. Okay. So here's what it looks like. So let's say the topic is cats. Your claim is cats are amazing rather than annoying. So your supporting detail 1 are cats are cute. Your evidence, as I said earlier, let's say it's just like, it's from the journal. One of the sources is saying how like cats release like oxytocin, right? So oxytocin and makes you love them more, right? So you would use that. That's a specific piece of evidence that ties into your evidence, or specific piece of evidence that ties into your supporting detail and claim. That's what it is, right? So that's evidence. Next we got the because statement, right? You have to explain your evidence. So that's what it is. Explain evidence, right? Okay. So this is sort of one of those statements that goes sort of like this, right? It's this shows yada yada yada. And then you gotta have the because what, right? So because this. So again, cause, think of it like cause and effect. Okay, so let's use this with our cat example, right? So we're describing that cats release oxytocin in humans when we see them because they're so cute. They have big bulging eyes, furry face. So the this shows part, right? It'll be like this shows our claim or our supporting detail because the cats and humans have sort of like a scientific relationship that would release oxytocin, right, in humans. Now, we're just making a general assumption because we don't have the full sources, and I sort of just thought of this off the dome, right? But if we were to have the sources, we would be able to get more specific and sort of use that to bounce our ideas off of. So, explain. This shows our supporting detail or claim because evidence, right? This is how I do it, at least. There's probably better ways, but I feel like this is something that would be beneficial for dummies who are trying to get it dumbed down as possible, right? Now, let's move on. Now that we have our because, we move on to consequently, right? So, consequences. In the consequently, you're going to make an assumption, right? So, make an assumption off of evidence, right? So, make an assumption off the evidence, right? So, this is sort of where it's going to be like, you're going to be like, you're going to try to make an implication off the evidence, right? So you got the evidence, right? So you got your evidence and then your implication, right? Implication. So consequently is sort of like the consequences. What happens as a result of this? And how does that tie into our claim or what we're trying to write about? So it should look a little bit like, for the cats at least, consequently, cats release oxytocin in humans, which is a bond that only cats and humans can get, which is not true, of course, but you get what I mean. I don't have the sources, but cats and humans having this bond that's only specific to the cats and humans shows how cats are amazing. Let's say, in fact, our thing is cats are amazing pets for humans specifically, right? So that's sort of what it's going to show because it's specific. Now, that you can format this like because consequently, right? You can even use consequently. Consequently, since cats release oxytocin, right, in humans, they have such a stronger bond because it's something that only humans and cats can get. You guys understand what I'm talking about? So that's how you implement consequently. Okay. Therefore, since blank blank blank, it proves right? Blank, blank, blank. So let's go back to our cat example for the final time. So the last time we'll use cats, Edward Beck's cat. So therefore, since cat or humans only receive oxytocin by looking at cute cats, it proves cats are the only specific animal that have a relationship on a chemical level with humans, right? Which will tie back to our claim because cats are amazing because of their specificity to humans and their relationship, right? So that's your therefore statement. You've come to a conclusion. You've made your claim solid because you've had evidence, scientific evidence, even if it works, right? But just sort of utilize what you were given in the sources, bounce your ideas off of this. If you can pull out some like scientific evidence from outside or off the dome, that would be way better. So let's put it together real quick. Okay, let's see if we can do it right now, right? So our thing was cats. What is it? Cats release oxytocin in humans, right? That's our evidence, right? So this is our claim, right? So cats release this, right? Now we have to say this is important because this shows humans and cats connect on a chemical level, right? Humans and cats connect on a chemical level, okay? Now we got our, excuse me, this shows cats and humans connect on a chemical level because the hormone is released specifically with humans and cats. Now, consequently, right? What's our consequently? Since this only happens to humans and cats, right? So since it's between, what is it, humans and cats, since it's between humans and cats, it makes their bond stronger, right? Makes, bonds stronger, right? So it makes their bond stronger. Now we need to have our analysis, right? So our analysis would be something like, what would it be? Like, it it makes the bond even stronger, right? Now, oh, we can sort of pull this out. Cats only have, because in the claim it would say, like, cats specifically only release it, right? So you could say, no other animal does this, right? Only cats, so only cats. And then the therefore statement, right? Therefore, right? So therefore, let's say, since cats and humans bond on a chemical level, it makes it even more amazing. Cats make more amazing companions because they are so specific to humans, right? So that's sort of what it would look like. It's not the best. I was just sort of just freeballing this, but I hope you understand what the general idea is. Cat, Edward Beck's cat. Boom. There we go. Now we got our final part, the conclusion. Here we go. Okay, so we're done with the essay. We've got the intro. We've got the body paragraph. All you got to do is repeat Cat 2 times because we love cats. And then finally, you're on your conclusion. Conclusion. See, this video isn't necessarily supposed to be like a whole guide of what you need to do. I hopefully just want to give advice to people that what I feel works for me, right? because somebody has helped me before, right? So I'm just trying to relay these points. So in the conclusion, it's simple. Just summarize the points, your points that you've developed, right? Points developed. Summarize the points developed. Okay, we went from anime to cats. Okay, and show how you've defended. Show your defense, right? Show your defense. Be an attorney, you got to defend it, and then you got to restate your thesis, right? So restate the thesis. Now, look, I know it's easier said than done, but you can still apply these to the real life sometimes. Okay, so this is basically the final thing that you got to do. I would give an example, but we're out of time. So I hope this was helpful. If you want to go back, go ahead. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, I guess let me know down. DM me if you're my friend. I hope this was helpful at least. And yeah, Ebcat. See you guys.